This is a real honor to be able to introduce Curtis. As David said, this 4.5 decades that Curtis has been a prolific sculptor is a specific number, because I've literally known him my whole life. So Curtis Patterson is one of the first, was the first African American MFA student at Georgia State University. We went from was an undergraduate student at the time, and so I've been, involved with Curtis in some way for my entire life. Visits as a child to Georgia State University. I think he and a kind of small group of sculptors, mostly working in metal casting, fabrication, working in large-scale sculpture. People like George Beasley led me to pursue an MFA at Grambling Academy along the way. I worked with this wonderful wife, Gloria, with the Career Planning Institute, which was an organization that allowed disadvantaged youths who were in a specific living environment to get a taste of what arts and crafts were like. It was a very rewarding thing for me specifically. Curtis has done, I'm going to really let this work speak for itself, and not to be cliche, but he's done so many public pieces, the Andrew Young Memorial, several pieces of Hartsville, Jackson International Airport, and so I'm actually going to talk about a moment with Curtis, and this is after this 29 years of teaching at the Atlanta College of Art, and probably having an amazing impact on so many sculpture students there. I had completed my MFA at Grambling Academy of Art, and I was working in the Caribbean, and I traveled back and forth quite a bit. And so on one occasion, I was kind of having this I'll just go ahead and call it an existential crisis. My partner and I, who was also a Grambling student, a sculptress, we come up out of the escalator from the trains at Hartsville Jackson, and we see one of Curtis's pieces. And I remember I just called my father and I asked him for Curtis's number. I called Curtis and I asked, "Hey Curtis, can we come by and see your studio, talk to you for a little bit?" And so he said, "Absolutely." Within a few hours, I was in Curtis's house. He was taking me on a tour of his, of his smaller kind of in-house studio, his small town in the back of his yard. And so I think that Curtis's commitment, not just to producing these amazing and meaningful works over the years, but to being an educator is, I think, the reason why as soon as the group of students who are trying to work towards a memorial to art again, the first African American student at Clemson University, but also specifically an architecture student, Curtis's name, of course, immediately came to mind, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to bring it here, to share his life and his work, which is amazing. And I would like to thank Dr. Thomas, and I would like to thank the CAF for not only putting him here, but giving the students of our small course, Material Matters, a chance to travel to see his studio in a few weeks, and travel further to see Spal's Furnaces and take part in some community involvement there. So thank you all very much. Thank you for singing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. And thank you, Shan, for that wonderful introduction. I have known Shan since he was a little boy, actually. His father and I were in graduate school together at Georgia State University. So I've known him for a very long time. And I'm happy to say that I'm very proud of you, Shan, now that you have become a professor here at the university for more than 6 years, you say? That's fantastic. I'm really proud of you. I'm going to share some slides with you guys tonight. It spans about 40 years, actually. I know most of you haven't been on this earth that long, but I've been doing this for a pretty good while. And it's not everything that I've done, but I'm going to share a sampling of most of the work that I've done. The first, am I doing this right? Do I need to point it? I was supposed to point at that, right?
Just the arrow.
It's,
You can just use this one, that one.
and will it advance here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't.
It was responding to the one in the back.
Yes. No, but they are simultaneous. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
It seems it's not moving. Let me see.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. We might need to open it again. We will cut this out in the video. There you
You can go to the next one. Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah. Sorry.
Technology beyond me. Yeah, I'm going to share a few slides with you that I've done for the last 40 years, actually. This first slide is a piece of a sculpture that was commissioned by the city of Atlanta. It's located in southwest Atlanta. It's actually kind of one of the gateways to the southwest community. And this piece was done in 1977. A lot of my work is dedicated to individuals. This particular piece, I was actually influenced by George Harrison's song called Here Comes the Sun. This particular piece is called Cometh the Sun. And one of the artists that made that song very popular was Richie Haven. And he sung that at Woodstock back in 1969. I have very vivid memories of that period. That's the year my son was born. But anyway, as I said, this is kind of the gateway to the Southwest community. It's about 15 feet tall and about 50 feet in length. And it's fabricated out of corten steel. This is a piece that Shan was just talking about it will be back at the Atlanta airport. Right now it's in my studio. They had to move it to a new location. So right now I'm housing it in my studio. It's titled Bright Moments, Bright Moments. This piece was done in honor of Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who was a jazz musician. He played multiple instruments at one time, and he was a very wonderful saxophone player and a very wonderful entertainer. That piece was fabricated out of bronze, commercial bronze. This is a piece that was done for the rapid transit system in Atlanta. It's called Benin Approach Departure. I was very fortunate in 1977, the year after I graduated from grad school, I was invited to Lagos, Nigeria for a world festival called Festac. And they had visual and performing artists from all over the world there, all of African descent, or for the most part of African descent. And it was just a wonderful 2-week period. As a visual artist, all I had to do was participate in an exhibition there. But of course, the performing artists had to perform, and we were allowed the privilege of seeing them every day. So it was really a wonderful experience. But this piece is called Benin Approach Departure. While I was in Lagos, I took a trip to Benin, Nigeria. And this drawing is influenced by some of the sketches that I made on my way there. This sculpture is also distorted a little bit. It's 120 feet long, and it's very hard to photograph. You can see that kind of fisheye effect. It's fabricated out of stainless steel. This next piece is one that was done in honor of Jesse Owens, the Olympian from the 1936 Olympic Games. He won 4 gold medals during the Olympic Games. And at first glance, this actually appears to be a pyramid, but it's actually 4 equilateral triangles that are geographically assigned apart from each other so that you can actually enter the piece. And as you enter the piece, there are actually quotations on the wall, on the inner wall of the piece by Mr. Owens. This piece is about 15 feet tall, and it's about 35 feet in diameter. This is another piece that was done for a rapid transit authority. Actually, I did the design for the canopy. This is located in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's located at a station called Settlers Landing. This is a piece, this is actually the beginning of a trip that we're going to take to St. Paul, Minnesota. This is a piece called Spiral for Justice, and we're in the process of loading it on not my truck, on this company's truck. Actually, it took 3 trucks to take it up there. The piece is called Spiral for Justice. There are 46 elements in this composition. Spiral for Justice was done in honor of Roy Wilkins, who was the executive secretary of the NAACP for 46 years. So this is a spiral that each one of these elements represent a year of service. And you notice around the top portion of your screen, you see an eruption of an obelisk. I don't know if this is going to bother with me coming away from the screen. This obelisk here, as the obelisk spirals around, as the obelisks advance, they actually increase in height. You can see it increasing in height. And there are 46 elements. The 46th element, which is a obelisk with an African reliquary on top of it, is actually symbolic of Mr. Wilkins himself. And it's actually on axis with the Judicial Building, which is located next door to the state capitol. I didn't know this when I got the commission. I actually had in mind of the reliquary facing the street, which would be to the left of this. And on one of my trips to St. Paul, one of the people on the committee said to me that the building next door to the state capitol was the Judicial Building. So we reversed the direction of the spiral to be on axis with the Judicial Building. So there's a kind of visual dialogue between the building and Mr. Wilkins himself. This is a piece that was done for the Atlanta airport some years ago. It's a wall that's 120 feet long. It's fabricated out of commercial bronze. And on top of that wall, there are 10 elements. You can see some of these elements in my studio. Now I'm in the process of fabricating in iron, which is an element that I use a lot in my work. I use the iron to symbolize domestic and manual labor. You can see that I have completed fabricated irons now. One on the left was dedicated to my grandmother, and the one on the right, my mother. Their names was Lizzie and Liza, and we titled these two irons Lizzie and Liza. The actual title of the piece is Ancestral Notions. This is one of the other elements in the piece. And as I said earlier, this is out of fabricated bronze. It says welcome to Atlanta. You can see that welcome inscribed on the east wall, and on the west wall it has to Atlanta. There are 10 sculptural elements on top of the wall. This is a shot of the whole piece. If any of you have been in Atlanta in recent years, you'll notice that that piece is no longer there. They have a really big canopy from the airport to the parking garage. And this piece was actually on the parking garage, the South Delta Terminal. And when they put the canopy up, they took the piece down, and it's now in storage. Hopefully someday it'll go back up at some location. They say it will, but I hope I live to see it. This is a piece that was done in honor of Andrew Young. Many of you probably know Andrew Young. He was the mayor of the city of Atlanta for a number of years. He was a U.S. ambassador, and he was also a U.S. congressman. This is an obelisk, obviously, and it sits on a plaza, a 35-foot plaza of bronze plates. These plates are 18 by 24 inches in length, and as I said before, it's about 35 inches in diameter. There are inscriptions. All of these plates are engraved, and there's elements on the plates that imply movement. I was really thinking about something that I could connect with the civil rights movement, and one day I was watching a news channel, and I noticed the cold front, and the weatherman talked about the cold front sweeping across the country. And I always thought about the civil rights movement as kind of sweeping across the country also. So I use this element a lot in my work. And this is a detailed shot of one of the areas with the cold front. There were demonstrations in many cities, Birmingham, Chicago, Detroit, and of course Memphis, which was the last big demonstration that Dr. King was involved in. But you can see the footprints on top of the cold front. This implies movement. This is a granite wall with one of Andrew Young's quotations on it. The walls were actually used as barriers of racial discrimination, but you can see the obelisk actually rises above the wall. And this symbolizes victories in nonviolence over hatred. This is another view of another shot of the same piece. This is a piece that I did about 6 years ago for Dallas, Texas, horse park. It's located in Dallas, of course, and the piece was being fabricated in my studio. We're in the process of fabricating it now. We're in this photograph, we're in the process of actually fabricating it. You can see the tail on that cardboard element of the tail. We had to travel to the horse park, and of course, the piece is 15 feet tall and no bridge. Many bridges are not that tall, so we had to install the tail once we got there. You can see it traveling without the tail on a low bed, flat bed truck. And this is a piece once it's actually installed in the park. This piece is called Equine Rhythm. It's about 15 feet tall and 17 feet in length. And it's fabricated out of corten steel. Corten is a weathering steel that will withstand the weather for a long period of time. Only one problem: if you have any areas on it where the metal actually, where water can settle, it will deteriorate. As a matter of fact, the first piece that I showed you was done in 1977, and we just had to repair some of the places on it where it actually corroded through the metal. This is a piece that we get into some smaller scale work now. One of the things that I've been, was really questioning early on was the sculpture pedestal relationship. This is a pedestal, actually it's in two parts, and the pedestal is made out of wood. This is a piece done in honor of Miles Davis, and it's titled after one of his songs. It's called Circle in the Round, and you can see that kind of improvisational circle there. This piece is on, you can see the pedestals are at two different heights, but the pedestal is made out of wood. And this piece was really very pivotal for me because I was trying to get away from using a cube or cylinder as a pedestal. And I actually used this kind of tabletop element as a pedestal. So using the same material, you don't necessarily know where the pedestal ends or the sculpture begins. It's called Still Life for Abby. It was a piece done in honor of the jazz musician Abbie Lincoln. And this piece is out of fabricated bronze. Now you'll notice this piece is very dark in color. It's the same bronze material that I used early on with this piece. They're the same material. The difference is this is what we call a cold patina, and this is a hot patina. That's the same, it's the same chemical that I use, sulfurated potash actually, but if you heat it, you can get it to go really very dark. And of course, I burnished some of the areas to kind of highlight the edges of the piece. This is another piece that has an alternative pedestal. Here, you can see the base of it is flat. This piece is called When Lies Arise, which is one that was done in honor of my grandmother. And this piece is called Shadows from the Past. This piece is about 6 feet tall, but you can see also the base of this has kind of a gabled effect. It's not flat on the floor. And the pedestal continues to evolve. This is a piece that I did in honor of Nelson Mandela. It's called Water for Mandela. And there's actually a container of water on that pedestal that you see there, kind of an offering of water for him. And then there's a pull-out shelf. It's kind of a participatory piece. If you pull this element out, then of course Water for Mandela will be revealed. This piece is about 8 feet in length and about 8 feet tall. And This is another piece that I've done in honor of Rosa Parks. It's called Montgomery Bus Stop. And for those of you who've spent a lot of time in the South, early on they had bus stops that looks like this element you see on the right here. And there are two benches in the piece. If you raise the bench, one of them has a poem under it by Mary McLeod Bethune that says, we're the custodians rather, but also the heirs of a great civilization. And on the other bench, it says, reserved for Rosa Parks. This is another piece that I did. It's called Fire for Biko. This piece was done in honor of Stephen Biko, who was a South African activist. He was killed in the 1976 or 78 massacre, I believe. The two pieces, Fire for Biko and Water for Mandela, are two pieces that I have in mind of doing 4 pieces using the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So far I've done fire for Biko, and water for Mandela. Now I have to do air and earth, and that's been a real challenge. But I have 2 individuals in mind that I plan to do those pieces for at some point. This is a piece called Nimble. This is also that same, this is fabricated out of bronze, commercial bronze, and this is the same chemical that I told you about earlier, sulfurated potash. It's just not quite as dark as the black. So you can get anywhere from a kind of golden color to a brown to a black. And this is another series that I started working on I think I started in about 2012. I call this the Rocker series. There are, most of them are done from 3/8" plate, and about half of them will actually rock because they are balanced on each end. Some of them are stationary. But this is a piece that's called Say It Loud. This is a detailed shot of the piece. And this is another piece called In Retrospect. This is a piece called View from Shango's Window. Shango is an African deity, the god of lightning and thunder. And usually it's a double axe. I only use one element of the axe in this particular piece. This is a piece called If I Had an Anvil, and you can see here that there's the continent of Africa on the piece, and actually the horn is actually symbolic of an anvil. So this piece is titled If I Had an Anvil. This is a detailed shot of a piece that was done in honor of Thelonious Monk, who was a jazz musician. He was a pianist, and I think you can see the reference of the piano in the sculpture. This is a piece that's also a rocker. It's called Ready in a Moment. It's also out of fabricated bronze. This is a piece called Cold Front, and I showed you the cold front earlier on, and you can see the front here in this piece. This is a piece called A Notable Journey. This is patina, hot patina also. And this is a piece called Ancestral Dance, which also has a hot patina on it. Recently I started doing some prints. This is a piece that was done in copper. It's called copper collé, where I actually took sheets of copper, very thin copper, like I think it's about 8 gauge, and it's actually applied to paper with a patina on it. But you can see I'm using some of the same elements that I use in the sculpture. And that trip to Benin that I took, I noticed in the Benin court they had a lot of flowers, and I was influenced by that. So you see the flower in the top right-hand corner, and a petal in the lower left-hand corner. And of course you can see the iron in the upper left-hand corner. That's one of the elements that you will find pretty central in my work. And again, I guess all of you probably figured out that this piece is called cold front, because you can see the blatant display of the cold front in this composition. This is copper collé also. And this piece is called Shango's Friends. Instead of using the double axe, I use a double iron in this instance. And this is a piece that I fabricated for, this is actually the last commission piece that I did. This was done last year for a community near Atlanta in Serenbe, Georgia. It's out of fabricated stainless steel. And this is the actual piece. The piece is about 9 feet tall on the pedestal, and it's fabricated out of stainless steel. It's really kind of an interesting environment where the piece is. It's actually located on a nature trail, a pedestrian path, and you kind of come up on this piece as you're walking. There are 5 benches around the piece, so it's actually kind of a meditative space. If you'd like to interrupt your walk and have a seat and just kind of meditate, you can. This is a detailed shot of it, and another detailed shot. And this is a piece, the piece that I'm about to show you was done for 3 individuals. Oscar Peterson, who was a jazz musician, Thomas Smith, and John Carlos. Thomas Smith was the winner in the 100 relays in the 1968 Olympic Games. And you can see this stand of this iconic fish risen toward the sky. The title of this piece is Hymn to Freedom. And I think that was a really, that was an interesting moment. That was something that got everybody's attention. While the national anthem was being played, they actually displayed this posture. And I related that hymn to freedom to the posture that they actually took. This is the piece being fabricated in my studio. And this is one of the elements of the piece. This is the piece after it was fabricated. It's now in an exhibition in Venice, Italy, and it will be there until next month. Before I shipped the piece over to Italy, I had several people to come by my studio to take a look at it, and this is during that presentation. I think there are 13 pieces to this sculpture. They all come apart because they're slot fitted, and these slot fitted pieces can be taken apart and placed flat into a crate, you can see that everything is contained in this crate now, which is only about 18 inches by about 4 feet in diameter. And this is a piece being carted through the streets of Venice. This is my son, who actually went over to, and some of the people there from the venue where it was being presented. And these guys are taking the pieces out of the crate. Like I said, there are either 13 or 14 elements in the piece. And these pieces can be slot fitted back together. You can see they have 2 of them together here, and they're placing it on a pedestal. And this is the view of the piece on the pedestal. This is another view of it. It's called Hymn to Freedom. And I think you can see the kind of iconic fist risen that is similar to the posture that John Carlos and Thomas Smith had when they performed in the 1968 Olympic Games. This is a piece that I'm currently working on. It's going to be cast in bronze. This is another view of it. And the piece on the right is actually a mock-up of Serenity for Shango. That's the piece that I did out of stainless steel for the Serenity community. And I believe this is the last slide. So, thank you very much.
You okay? We have a few questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're gonna open the floor for questions for maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't know if do we need the mic? Do we need to move the mic, or we could? I think we can hear. You guys can hear me at the end, right? So we can do it just like this. So.
Thank you for your presentation and your work. It's really amazing to see the span of your work over time. I just had a really basic question. Do you work from sketches and drawings, or do you sort of? I know it's hard to do sculpture in these materials. It's freestyle, but.
It varies. For the most part, I work from drawings, but very, very little. I get a concept or an idea and just do a sketch of it, and then I'll take cardboard and further articulate that. Most of these pieces that you saw, like Serenity for Shango, the piece that you see in wood there, that was all done in cardboard at first, but the beginning of it was just a simple sketch. And it was actually one element. I didn't sketch all of the elements. It's like once I get an idea, I can kind of move from that point on. Okay?
Hi, I have another question, I guess, around process. A lot of your work is kind of in honor of a place or a person. Like, what does your process look like in terms of like research or understanding a specific place or a specific person that you're honoring through your work?
That's a good question. I think I can answer that by describing one of the pieces that I did. I don't know if you remember, it's called Spiral for Justice. That's the piece for Roy Wilkins. When I was developing the maquette for that piece, I knew I wanted to do something about justice. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to relate something about justice, and I thought of the idea of a spiral. And then I thought about the fact that he had worked for such a long time for one job, and for such a great cause. So when I came up with the idea, and this is one piece that actually came up with the the title before the idea was actually completed. It doesn't always work that way, but I knew the spiral was going to be central because I had connected it with the 46 years of service. And I felt really good about it. All of these pieces are competitive, and you're competing with a number of artists who've oftentimes had a lot more experience than you have. And once I came up with the concept of Spiral for Justice, I felt pretty confident that I had a chance at doing it. One of the other things is with a dignitary like Roy Wilkins, same case with Andrew Young, the panel who makes the selection is usually divided. And that division is half of them will want something that's representational, and the other half will want something that's, you know, kind of optional. And there's usually this fuss. And I think it's really good that they have those kind of panels because it brings out a lot of good discussion. In the case of Roy Wilkins, I didn't tell you, one of the walls on Roy Wilkins has there were like 3 walls, but they have a door that reveals quotations by Roy Wilkins. But one of the doors actually reveal a portrait of him. And the person that I used to make a portrait is a very prolific artist, and he happened to be one of my students some years ago in high school. His name is Thomas Blackshear. Some of you guys might know him. He did the portrait for me. So it was very realistic. So everybody was happy. The people who wanted the figurative aspect of Mr. Wilkins, they had the portrait, and the people who didn't necessarily want that, they had the conceptual idea of what it could be about. So, you know, it was kind of a happy ending on that piece. And the same thing with the Andrew Young piece. What they did in that case, they selected my piece, but they also had someone to make a figure of Andrew Young. They put it in proximity to the piece, which works very well. And I say it works very well because you can drive by and see people taking pictures by Andrew Young, you know, and you see little children reaching up to touch his hand. So it's a win-win situation. Okay?
In summer 2020, I went to Ohio, and your Ohio State University, and saw your Jesse Owens piece in front of Ohio Stadium, aka the Horseshoe. Can you speak to the importance of like public space in terms of like displaying something like that? Because I didn't even know for the longest Jesse Owens went to Ohio State, and the plaza is also named after him too. And that's where the fans typically enter in, as far as that little like acrylic opening, sort of like oval of.
Right, that kind of rotunda.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really an iconic stadium, and I just happen to like college football, and Ohio State is one of my favorite teams. I've actually seen the band actually go through that piece doing some of the celebrations. Yeah. But that was really a wonderful experience doing the piece for Jesse Owens. I, you know, read about him for many years, and of course I knew about him growing up. And I had an opportunity to go out to his home to see his medals and meet his wife, and that was a very exciting time for me. Any other questions? Okay.
Question. A lot of your sculptures seem to, or your art seems to represent the known people.
I'm sorry?
I said a lot of your art seems to reflect people who are known, like Wilkins and Mandela and Young. The project that we have here is about people who are unknown. So we have unknown burials in our cemetery, and I'm wondering if you could, talk to us about how would you represent the unknown, right? It's just these people, we know they were here, they were enslaved, they were sharecroppers, they were convicts, but we don't know where they're buried. We know, exactly like who is buried where. Mm-hmm. Could you give us any advice on thinking about how to represent when you don't have a name, when you don't have a specific person, when you don't know what they look like?
Well, I would, first of all, do a lot of research on my own, and I would certainly spend time with the stakeholders, whoever they are, in terms, I mean, I know they must have some concept or idea in terms of what they want. So it would be a collaborative. If I were involved in something like that, in fact, all of the pieces that I've done, just like I told you, the spiral that was going in one direction, and somebody suggested that it goes in the opposite direction, which really made a lot more sense. I would collaborate with whoever the stakeholders were and the people in the community. But I mean, being an African American and knowing about those kind of situations, unmarked people and people that have not been recognized, I mean, that would be something that I would be interested in becoming involved in, of course. And, I would, do as much research on it on my own at first, and then just kind of be involved with whoever was responsible for handling the program. Yeah. Which one?
Gracing us with photographs of your exquisite pieces. You have been a sculptor for a long time. In what ways have you grown as an artist over time? That's the first question. And the other part is, what advice would you give your younger self compared to where you are now?
My younger self?
Yes.
Oh boy, I wish I had that. I don't know. I've really been, I think I've been extremely fortunate to have been involved in making art. I mean, it's such a wonderful experience. I mean, I look forward to going to my studio. It's kind of a sanctuary for me. And, my wife probably thinks I take a nap sometimes there, and occasionally I do, but for the most part, I'm working. And I'm really enjoying my work. It's pretty physical, I mean, I like that aspect of it as well. But if I were younger, I would probably do things like tell myself to be a little bit more practical about wearing earphones when I'm grinding. That would be one for sure, because my hearing, as you can see, I'm walking place to place to hear you guys now. And it's just being, wearing respirators and masks and things of that nature. I'd be a little bit more particular about that. My son works with me quite a bit, and sometimes he'll actually come over and put earphones on my ears just to remind me that I need to be doing that, So I would do things, I would, if I had that opportunity, I would go back and address some of those issues.
In what ways have you grown as an artist?
I think this is part of the process, just being able to communicate with people like yourself about what I've done. I mean, it's really remarkable to me that I can go to my studio and work and do what I want to do, and think about the fact that somebody else might be satisfied with what I'm doing and really appreciate it. That's really a pretty remarkable experience. I think artists are really blessed to have the ability to do that. Not that I have any particular ability, but for people to encourage me to continue to do what I'm doing, that's a blessing. It really is, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it.
Most societies, most cultures assign meaning to material, meaning to color, and other things that we visually see. So we might think of marble very different than we think of wood. How do you make the decision, or how do you think through the appropriate material? And it caught my attention when you mentioned the iron, and you use that representing work, for instance. And so are there other examples, or how you think through materials that you can share with us?
Materials are something that I became familiar with pretty early on. I started out working in clay, and you know, I worked in clay, plaster, I've worked in wood, I worked a little bit in stone and metal. I really like clay a lot, but one of the problems that I discovered early on is it's heavy, you know, and it's fragile. And if you do anything big, it's a real issue with moving it. I think that's probably one of the reasons that I'm using these slot fitted pieces now, because you can slot fit them together and you can make really large pieces. And then the practicality of transporting it is very practical also. But in terms of material, clay is probably really one of my favorite materials now. I'm working, these wax pieces that I'm working on that's going to be cast in bronze, it has the same type of behavior as clay, you know, and I like that very much. But, you know, in recent years, I've just found out that metal was the most suitable material for what I'm trying to do. But they're all great materials. I have respect for all of the ones that I've worked in and probably appreciate them equally as well. When I was working with wood, everything was for the most part subtractive, you know, and when I'm working with clay, it can be additive or subtractive. You know, even after you finish a piece, if you don't like it, you can just kind of cut it apart and, you know, alter it. And you can do it, because of the tensile strength of metal, you can alter it pretty easily.
Curtis, over the years I've been following your work, but in terms of what I call the African American artists, especially the sculptors, names like Richard Hunt and Mel Edwards and all over the period. But what I find interesting about your work from the perspective from an Afro-sensitivity part, in terms of images and stuff like that, I cannot think of no other sculptor working today who incorporate the Africanism into their creation. The imagery, the symbolism, and I know it have to do with the fact you went to Africa, and that had a significant impact on your overall sensitivity to African design and motif imagery, the whole 9 yards. But it's interesting that I cannot think of no other sculptor working today that actually incorporate that visual language into their own creation. Now I may go to a basic fact, you know, that to me, modernism grew out of Africanism. Modernism grew out. As a matter of fact, Africanism gave birth to modernism. And it's just exciting to see your work, where you're working today, able to incorporate that Africanism in some of your work. And I commend you on that, Curtis. You did an outstanding job. I know you had influences in other sculptors. I think of Richard Hunt and Mel Edwards, and probably Martin Puryears, Elizabeth Catlett, a bunch of more African-American sculptors. But you are unique in the fact that you stay in contact with that Africanism in your creation. We thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. You're very complimentary and selfish, probably at the same time. But there are other people who are doing, I think, what I'm doing that you might not be familiar with, but I really do appreciate the compliment, Winston. Winston Wingo is a sculptor that's from Spartanburg that actually went to school here.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. Received my MFA in sculpture a few days ago from here.
Yeah.
But also
You can tell it was a few days ago by his head, right?
Well, that gesso, I just forgot to wash it out.
But thank you very much, Winston. I appreciate that.
You know, the images, the language in those, I'm sure, like I said, that others incorporate Africanism in their sculpture, but for me personally, yours seem to stand out, resonate more with me than others.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
To go with Dr. Thomas's question, all of your sculpture seems to be brilliant and triumphant and glorious. And how would you put that same sensitivity and heart under the ground? I mean, we were thinking about woodland and marking those unknown places of burial. And the reason I'm asking that question is I did a lot of research on the Vietnam Memorial and the discussion before that. And the one that was supposed to win was this great triumphant, a monument, right? And the one that won was a woman who went down in the ground. And so I'm just asking, how would you translate all of that triumphant sensitivity that you have in that situation?
In the situation of?
Of the unnamed buried that Dr. Thomas was asking about.
I would do research, and like I said, I mean, I think inherently being an African American and knowing the kind of struggles that we've gone through and the kind of recognition that we've received, I think I bring something to the table. I would bring something to the table from that perspective. Not that other people wouldn't, but I would certainly welcome the challenge.
I'd just love to see it.
I would too. I mean, that's the thing about making art. I mean, I have no idea what I would do, but I would pursue it relentlessly to try and arrive at something that would be meaningful, not just for now, but for the future as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question.
This is a minor question. You went to Grambling State University.
How did you know that?
Research.
That's my school. You're not a Grambling night, are you?
There's some LSU people here as well. Have you ever thought of pieces that were like Bayou-like influence, like in terms of Creole?
Bayou?
Yeah.
Uh,
Something that homes to like your past there in Louisiana.
I was actually involved in a show over in Dallas, Texas called 6 Sculptors from the Bayou Area. I'm from Shreveport, which is the very northern part of Louisiana. It's not really part of the Bayou, but they included me in the I guess because I was from Louisiana, they included me in the show. But you say, how would I project?
Like, have you ever thought of like Creole influence pieces or like the like African American history of like Louisiana within those pieces?
Probably a little bit. I mean, I really like their cooking a lot. And of course, going to Grambling, I was, close to quite a few students from the southern part of Louisiana, and became great friends with them. But I don't know how specifically I would do that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not afraid to say I don't know when I don't know. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys very much for coming out. I really appreciate it.